Okay, welcome back. We're going to go continue on with some of the information about 3D. We're going to start talking about some of the palettes up in the ribbon. And basically, we've covered the visualization styles. Um, and how do we start? What do we start with, right? Basically, what I want to start with is the primitives. And we have the box tool here, and we saw in the earlier video that we created a box. Primitives are kind of what they sound like. They are primitive shapes, primitive geometry that if you combine, they're simple by themselves, but when we combine them, they actually become more complex, right? So, and that's a lot of what happens in architecture. Actually, they'll take basic primitive shapes, combine them together, and create more complex geometry. So, this very first button here is kind of crucial to understanding 3D solids. If you click on the drop down, we have a list of, I think, 8, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yep, so there are 8 primitives. In a lot of textbooks, there are only 7 primitives, but AutoCAD is using 8 because of the polysolid here. And these primitives are your basic geometric shapes. So again, box, and you can draw these in 3D or in a two-dimensional, right? I'll show you the difference. So if I draw in even though this is a 3D ribbon, okay, my view is straight down. My view is in 2 dimension. So I'm going to be missing information. So if I try to draw a box, I have to read the prompts. And the prompts say specify first corner. So left click, drag it out. I'll say 0.5 and 0.5. And now it says specify a height. Now I've got this weird dashed line. And I'm going to say 0.5 again and hit enter. Now that doesn't look like a box or a cube. It doesn't look three-dimensional at all. But again, I'm looking at it from a top-down or a two-dimensional perspective. So if I use Shift and my mouse button, my mouse wheel button, I can now see in 3D. And if I draw that same box, it looks a little bit different. So click to start, and I'm going to say 0.5 and tab 0.5, enter. And then again, lift, specify a height. I can also specify a negative value, and it'll go below the floor, right? But I'm going to say 0.5 and hit enter. So now I've got the same box, and I can see when I'm drawing it in 3 dimension. So it makes things a little bit easier, again, using Shift and the middle mouse wheel button as a button. Hold everything down, and then just move your mouse, and you'll be able to orbit around those spots. Let me change the visualization style here to conceptual. That's what I prefer. Okay, so getting used to drawing that way will be very helpful. And practice with all the primitives, right? So the primitives here, we got a cylinder. So the cylinder, I'm going to left click, specify a center point, and I'm going to come out maybe 0.25, hit enter. And then again, I can move my mouse and lead it in the proper direction. I can make it go down or I can make it go up. And I'll say 0.75, hit enter, and I've created a cylinder. All right, I can see the bottom, I can see the top. That's the cylinder. Cone. Cone operates very similar to a cylinder, so I'm going to left click to specify a center point, and I'm going to say 0.3, hit enter, and again, lead my mouse in the direction that I want the cone to go, and I'll specify 1.5, enter, and that is your cone. And a cone can be very shallow. It doesn't have to be as steep as that, right? I can just create a new one here really quick. If I bring it up just a tad, that is also a cone. Okay, that is also a cone. So it doesn't have to look like your traditional cone here, but it is indeed a cone. Moving down to sphere. Sphere works a little bit differently, and I'll show you in a second. So It's making that ball, right? And specify a radius of, let's make 0.5, and I hit enter. The difference with the ball is that it starts kind of on your XY plane, on your floor or on your ground level, and it goes above and below. So that's why you sort of see the grid going through the ball or the sphere, because it is truly above and below that floor, right? So if I click on front, we get to see a front view. So basically the bottoms of all of these is where my XY plane is. And you can see that the sphere is on both sides, above and below that XY plane. So next, what do we have next here? We've got pyramid. Okay, pyramid. Again, it's asking me for a center point, so I'm going to click there, and it works via a radius, right? So from the center out to the midpoint of the edge, and I'm going to say 0.5, enter, and then basically a height for, so I'll say 0.5 as well, for that point tip or pointed tip of the pyramid. And that's my pyramid. And if I wanted to bring my pyramid down below, we can do the same thing. 0.5 for a radius, and this time I'm going to bring my pyramid down below. So again, two completely different angles, right? If I change to my view cube and say front, we can see this one is going down and the one back there is going up. Okay, so I'm going to change my angle again. There we go. And let's see, we got a couple of more here. The wedge. The wedge, again, is specifying the corner, so you're kind of drawing a rectangle. And once you're done with the left rectangle, you're going to lift or drop to create that wedge shape. And well, let's say distance of 1 or height of 1. So that's going to be our wedge. And the torus. The torus is kind of like a donut. Think of a donut. So I'm going to left click to specify a center, and my radius will be 1. And zoom in a little bit. And then basically you're figuring out the diameter. So let's say 0.4. And that will be your torus. Zoom out a little bit. So as you start drawing more and more, geometry, you're going to start running into this spatial issue where, this donut looks like it's pretty close to all the items in the background. And as you start to orbit, it kind of disappears on you a little bit because there's a lot of black space or empty space. So that will play a trick on your eyes for, spatial distance. So here we can see that there is indeed a good distance between those elements. But if I bring it a little bit closer like that, then it looks like it's literally right on top of all of these other geometric primitives. Okay, so just be careful with that. And let's see, polysolid is the last one. Polysolid is kind of, it reminds me of, the Tron walls. So this is just drawing a three-dimensional wall. It's just like using the line tool in 2D. Whenever you're done, just right click and hit enter, and you got yourself a wall. Now, any one of these elements or items that I drew can be placed on different layers, and the different layers, you select your item and just go up here and choose to be on the center layer, let's say. Or maybe the wedge, I'll select. Actually, I've got two of them selected, so I'm going to hit escape. Select that one, and maybe that'll be on the construction layer. So you can have elements be of different colors, which might help you with certain items to be able to tell what is what. Maybe a phantom, do a purple. Maybe this cone is on the dimension layer. Just so if you need some sort of differentiating color, then you can just put each element on a different layer, again by selecting that particular item and placing it on a different layer. So that is primitives.